Extensions are the individual handsets and phones that are part of your system. If we head out up to reports and then real-time activity, we can see a list of the current active and inactive extensions. Let's head back to extensions and manage. Each extension needs to have a unique extension number, and no two phones can have the same extension number. We have three options for adding. Actually, two options for adding. You can add an individual extension, or you can import a massive Excel spreadsheet of extensions if you've got a lot of them to add. Let's go ahead and add a new one. Let's call it extension 650, and we'll call this test phone 1. Now, these two fields are essentially all you need to get an extension going, but I will still walk you through the rest of these sections so you know what they do. The next field is the password or secret. Every phone has to authenticate with the server using the extension number and the password. Otherwise, the server will not allow them in. On every extension, you have control over what phone number shows up whenever they dial out. If you have an outbound route defined, you can scroll to the bottom and assign it an outbound route. Now, there's a separate video for outbound routing, so I suggest you look into that if you're interested in manipulating outbound routes. The voicemail tab enables you to either disable or enable their voicemail box. If the voicemail is disabled, they will simply hear the caller will simply hear a busy signal because there is nowhere to go after the phone has rung. Voicemail passwords are digits only because phones do not have letters typically. And the password required field requires the user to enter a password when they're checking their own voicemail. Normally, it's disabled so that if you check your own voicemail, you do not have to enter your PIN number. There are two checkboxes here to allow the voicemail system to play the date and time that you received the voicemail in addition to caller ID information if you want to. And then, of course, voicemail to email. You can set this to whatever email address you want, and the system will automatically email you a copy of your voicemail whenever you receive one. The disable voicemail greeting switch will simply get rid of any kind of announcement to your voicemail box. So typically, an employee will have the greeting, "Thank you for calling XYZ. I'm currently unavailable. Please leave me a message." What this switch will do is completely get rid of that greeting and make it silence. This is not normally too useful. In fact, it's sometimes confusing, but if you use it in conjunction with a virtual receptionist menu, you can have essentially a menu that says, if you'd like to leave me a message, press 1, otherwise press 0 to get to the front desk, that sort of thing. Heading to the next tab, which is call flow, our first panel here allows you to set up call forwarding. In this case, if we're going to turn on call forwarding, you can enter in a full 10-digit phone number. You can enter in an extension number if you'd like to, whatever you want essentially. The next section is called simultaneous ring. Now, this is technically also called find me, follow me, but we have decided not to call it that. So if we enable simultaneous ring, this simply means you can select multiple extensions to ring at the same time that your extension does. This is useful for people with mobile apps. If we were editing the Luke Apartment extension 100, we would need to set his mobile app as a simultaneous ring extension. That way they both ring at the same time, regardless if he's at his apartment or if he's walking around. The next panel gives you a lot of power about how calls are routed. The first destination is the no answer destination. What this means is, after the phone has rung a certain amount of duration, which default is 20 seconds, you can allow the call to go to voicemail, which is you just leave it as default, or you can send the phone call to a ring group, a voicemail box, wherever you want. And this is if they don't answer the phone after a while. Now, the second destination is the busy destination. This is where calls get sent if the user or the person who's at this extension actually rejects the phone call that's coming in. So if they're currently on the phone and they hit reject on a new phone call, you can simply send them to a voicemail box or you can send them to an IVR menu, whatever you want. This extension will probably not get used very much, but basically, if your phone is unplugged or simply offline, meaning that you've lost power, your internet is down, etc., you can actually reroute calls to wherever you want. The most common usage is forwarding to your cell phone number. So if for some reason the office's internet or the power is down, you can go ahead and route all your phone calls to your cell phone. The Advanced tab. The first option is monitor latency. This is really not important. You really don't want to disable that. It's not going to affect the way the system works. So it's mainly for debugging purposes. Now, audio codec. There are multiple options. Our system does support Opus. However, the phones have to be compatible with Opus. MuLaw is the typical HD codec. ILBC is for, choppy internet connections, and G729 is also for choppy internet connections. Most of the time, you will want to let this stay any of the above so that the handset can choose. Call waiting means that you can disable the ability for a phone to receive multiple phone calls at the same time. So if this is an analog phone line through like a fax ATA or something, you'll want to disable this so calls don't interfere with each other. Most IP phones have multiple lines, so you'll want to keep this enabled. Now, the next option is the ring time. By default, all extensions will ring for 20 seconds before going to the no answer destination. However, you can set it to, I think, up to 120 seconds if you'd like. Call recording. We are actually currently revamping the recording system as this video is being made. But for right now, you can permanently disable call recording, which is recommended for HIPAA compliance, as well as call centers. You can enable it, which means all calls are recorded. And you can also use on-demand recording. The difference between the two options is this. If you have it default off, it means that a phone call will never be automatically recorded. You have to type in the code, which is 2580, to start recording. Now, default on is the opposite. The phone call will always get recorded, and you have to type in the code to turn off call recording. Of course, you can have music on hold, and the albums can all be different for every extension. So if you've got an employee that wants their music on hold to sound like rock music, you can have a rock album. That sort of thing. If you want jazz hold music, you can set that as your album as well if you want to. Remember that the extension number needs to be unique. The system will tell you if the extension is taken. It says here the extension number has been taken by an existing toggle-based route, which is a video that we have recently created. Now let's add a mobile app extension. Our extension 100 already has a companion mobile app, but we'll go ahead and add another one, and we'll call it extension 102. So we're going to add an extension, call it 102. Let's call it new mobile app. The rest of this you can pretty much ignore here. However, you probably do want the person's mobile app to dial out of the same line. So let's just assume it's this one. Now on a mobile extension, unless it's their only extension, which it probably isn't, we'll go ahead and disable voicemail simply because it's not necessary. Let's save it. Actually, there's one thing to know. When it comes to mobile apps, they tend to bounce between cell phone networks and wireless as you tend to walk around and your phone is in your pocket. So it is good practice to disable monitoring latency on mobile apps. This really doesn't affect the performance of the system. It just enables the server to keep the app connected for longer. Let's submit the new mobile app. Now, we can see here in the list that we've got extension 102, which is our new mobile app. However, we still have to tell the system to ring the mobile app when the primary extension is ringing. So we'll go to our primary extension. Let's just say this is my desk phone. Click Edit. Go to the Call Flow section, and we're going to want to enable simultaneous ring. What this means, and of course we have to select the new mobile app. Actually, let's do both. Actually, no. An individual mobile app. So what this means is that whenever the primary desk phone extension, in this case it's 100, rings, it's going to also ring the mobile app. And instead of 12 seconds, I'm going to set it to 20 seconds. So now if you call extension 100, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, both your desk phone and your new mobile app will ring at the same time. So at this point, let's go ahead and click Apply Changes so that the new mobile app is stuck into the server and it's ready to be used. At this point as well, you can either manually configure the mobile app with the password and everything you set up, or you can head over to provisioning. I recommend using it this way so that you can use QR codes. Let's add a device. Of course, we have to set it to Grandstream Wave because that is the mobile app. The only other field you have to set is this extension. So we're just telling the system we're adding a new mobile app and it's using the extension 102 as its primary SIP account. Ignore MAC address and ignore template because these are not relevant. Let's click Submit. Down here, you'll see that we have a new mobile app for extension 102, and it gives you the option for this QR code. At this point, all you do is type in the email address of the user that's setting up the new mobile app. It will send them this QR code as well as instructions. And at that point, they are ready to connect. You've already configured inside of extensions for their mobile app to ring. So at this point, all they need to use is the QR code in order to start using their mobile app. Remember to hit Apply Changes whenever you are finished with the PBX.